Welcome to our next episode, and we are really, really excited. Today is the Spotlight.
Yes.
And if you're a regular viewer, you know that we don't always have Spotlight. Bersaba usually hogs all the airtime.
Right.
And once in a while, we're able to twist the arm of someone we really respect and think a lot of, who has done some great things in the world and put them in the spotlight. And that's what we want to do today. And we're super excited to have Mr. Jeff Levitan. He is the principal and the founder of a company known as Better, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that. I'd love for him to.
Yes.
And he's done a lot of other great things too. So before I butcher what you've done and who you are, Jeff, why don't you start off by, if you would, well, first of all, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to in these turbulent times.
Well, great. James, thanks for having me, and Bear. I appreciate it. I'm glad and honored to be a guest on your podcast today. If I could maybe set the framework a little bit of my upbringing, I think that helps a little bit. And certainly whenever you hear about somebody or from them, you want to know a little bit about them. And so I think I grew up what I would consider a typical middle-class kid from the south side of Chicago, blue-collar family. My dad was a truck driver. My mom waitressed. They struggled financially. I've got one brother, a little bit older than I am. And our childhood was tattered with watching our parents argue over the lack of money and the struggles that came from that. And as a young child, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I knew what I didn't want to be, and I didn't want to be broke. I didn't want to struggle financially, sort of that pain avoidance mentality. And so whatever that was that hit me in the heart, I think it found a little bit of my why. I need to get myself away from this poverty mentality and get myself financially secure. I did end up, I was at community college and then went off to a university and got a finance degree and went out into the workforce thinking, all right, now I'm going to go out there and go to Wall Street. Well, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections. It's more who you know than what you know. And I ended up in a corporate job I didn't like, and cold calling during the day by foot back in the old days. You know, there weren't even cell phones, I think, in 1993 when I was, maybe a bag phone or something like that. But we went out and cold called by foot. And I built a good thick skin, and I built an ability to handle rejection. And, that served me later in life. And one day someone introduced me to the financial services industry. This was 1995. And I thought, this is financial planning. It's more what I wanted to do. I could help myself. I could get into what I wanted to and help other people. And so I built a practice in the financial services industry, mainly focused on the middle America swath. A lot of people in finance go for the money. They go straight up to the wealthy. The whole goal is to get a few billionaire clients and you're done. And I went the other route. I wanted to help those that needed it the most, that were like my family growing up. And so I was more of an educator, and I educated people on financial literacy and what that looked like. And then I also got into teaching entrepreneurs to get into that industry. And back in the 90s, I did very well. It was well suited for me. I was guided by my why and I found my skill set in that industry. And 5 short years later, I had a sales force of thousands. We were doing millions and millions of dollars of business. And I was what I would consider at that moment to have been really successful. And so I did the only logical thing when you grow up a blue collar kid, like the movie Rudy. The goal is to end in middle management and retire. When I got this kind of money, I made a decision when I was down, which you should never make a decision when you're down, because that's not you, that's your fear making that decision for you. And I retired at 30, the age of 30. I retired. I moved down to Florida, Miami. I was single, rich, young, as good looking as you could be with this kind of a face. And I had a lot of fun. I thought that's what I needed. And literally, it only took about 90 days. That didn't last long. 3 months later, I was miserable. And I realized I needed a vacation, not retirement. I was a little burnt out, and I made a bad decision at a bad time. And at that time, I realized I need to get back into life. I needed to get back into making a difference and having purpose. And it was at that moment that it was just put on my heart. I started praying more than I usually did. I started thinking more about what my purpose was in life and what my skill set was. And I wanted to get back into what I was good at, but I needed a purpose that was higher than money, because the money didn't make me happy. The first swath of it did, by the way, buying stuff for the first time, having nice things, having people go ooh and ah and wow, you're great. I really was. I think the meaning behind it was to impress others, and the law of diminishing returns kicked in, and I wasn't going to work nearly as hard for money as I did the first round. And so it was put on my heart to help. I realized what I was missing during retirement was contribution. And so I said, where can I contribute the most? And I started thinking about philanthropy and charities. And I said, well, I don't have $1 billion. I got a few mil. Like, where can I do the most good with the least amount of money? And I thought, well, developing countries and orphans. If I can help kids that have nothing, even a low chance of survival, I could probably save some lives with the money I have. So I started a children's charity called All for One in the year 2000. And I went to Nicaragua for the first time. It was my first developing country. And I saw things I can never unsee on that trip. I saw a beautiful country. I saw beautiful people. And I saw poverty like I never saw before. All my self-pity went away. Kids on dirt floors, no shoes, no electric. And as sad as that was, they were more joyful than all the kids I saw in America with everything. And I thought the dichotomy, it confused me. And I thought, well, I'm going to come help these folks. I'm going to help any way that I can. I partnered with Save the Children and CARE. And I came home and I threw some of my money in and raised other money. And we built or refurbished a clinic in the mountains of Nicaragua. And we partnered on projects to help orphans and education programs. And it felt so good. It was the best feeling of my life, more than any amount of money I'd ever made. Couldn't wait to go do it again. Came home, raised more money, brought people with me. And that was the beginning of All for One. Fast forward to today, we're in 26 countries. We built these things called Child Prosperity Centers, which is, think about a campus where there's an orphanage, a school, and a clinic. And it also is right in the middle of a community. And there's maybe even a community center element where the village raises the whole group of orphans. And they're integrated with other kids that aren't orphans in the community. And we've got 2 of those now, one in East and one in West Africa, one in Uganda and one in Sierra Leone. And along the way, I adopted kids, and I've got children from Africa now also. And my biological kids of my own. I got married, and just, it's been a great part of my life. And I came back with fervor in business. I'm like, I need $1 billion now, but not for me this time. God, give it to me. Universe, provide it for me, because I'm going to be a good steward of it and go save a lot of kids. And so that's where I'm at today. If you fast forward, I've got a big business. My business continued to grow. It's done hundreds of millions of dollars a year worth of profit. And I handed that all to my wife a couple of years ago, so that I could pursue more philanthropy. But then other business things hit my plate, and I can't help myself. So I'm standing up a few companies now. Better, BETTR, being one of them. It's a fun experiment for me to use everything I learned over 30 years of successful business in financial services and to apply it to something new, supposedly faster and easier. Although nothing's easy that's worthwhile. And I'm in the throes of the greatest times of my life, I believe, right now, because I'm working as hard as I ever have, but with wisdom alongside my work ethic and a little bit of money behind me that doesn't hurt either, and resources and friends like you. I think relationships are a big piece of wealth. I think people discount that. As much as you're trying to, if you're a day trader and you're trading money every day, or you're a real estate investor and you're looking at property, I think every day you ought to work on relationships, because that, to me, that's the greatest form of wealth that never goes away. You can lose money, you can lose a property, but if you have real, true friendships, that's a form of wealth that's probably the most valuable. So that's where I am today. And I've always been a big fan of yours, James, and obviously studied your great journey, and am so impressed right now with your, I call it the redemption tour. It's more than a tour. It's not a musical tour because it doesn't end, right? But
Right.
it's where you are in your life and what you've been through and how you're coming back. It's so inspiring to me. And I'm so glad we got to, I was a fan from afar, and now I feel like you're a friend in life. And I'm going to be right side by side with you on not only your redemption tour, but the journey from here on in. And I think it's a great message for so many people out there that are lost or think that they can't be redeemed. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Where do we begin?
I know.
So what a story. And this is why we're attracted to you, because of who you are. And so let's back up for a second. I'm really fascinated that it took you all of 90 days to realize that the big life and the high life in retirement was not where you wanted to be. Now, if you look at 30 years of age, right? And so if you look at people who retire, and the research tells us this, people who retire and they don't have some purpose to drive them, they expire very, very quickly. They literally die. And so here you are at 30 years of age. You're living the life that so many of our young viewers today would go, oh my God, if I could move to Miami and have the Ferrari and the bling. And there's so many people on social media where this will be showing, who are going, look at my watch, look at my plane, look at my car, and we're so conditioned. So here's the question. It took you 90 days to realize, hey, there's more to me. There's more to life than that. Why is that you learned that so quickly, relatively speaking, to the rest of society?
Thank you. I believe a lot of that is, I was self-aware. I think I was a little more self-aware than the average person because of what I had done before in my career and in my life. Certainly when I got into financial services, just like when you get into anything, how are you going to differentiate yourself? And it's always got to be through personal development. It's not outside, it's inside, right? So I read all these books, and I was a great student of wisdom and learning a lot of things, even in my 20s. And I became self-aware. And I took things like, you probably heard of the Landmark Education Program. I did that, and I did other things, so many of them, right? And I loved it all, by the way. It was all very beneficial at my rise. But the party guy, the fun, blingy guy, the show-off guy, it wasn't who I was anymore. And I don't even have a judgment call on that. By the way, for people, and I know you didn't grow up with anything too, being a preacher's kid, when you grow up without anything, that's all you dream of is, man, someday if I could have that car, someday if I can get a Rolex, someday if I can get a big house, that will be where I signal to the world and show them I'm successful. And then I'll get what? Maybe more respect, whatever else it is. Well, when you self-develop enough and you're not even that person anymore, it's fun to go get that stuff. And I think you should. A lot of people want to shame you, like, oh, you're so shallow. That's all you want. I think you have to try it. If you try it and you happen to love it and get addicted to it, and you need your fifth Ferrari or Lambo brings you the satisfaction as the first one, or you can't get a big enough house or enough jewelry, well, then maybe that is your identity and that's who you are. I think, though, even those people are lacking a bigger purpose in their life. So in the meantime, until they know what else to do, until they intersect with somebody or something where they have the aha moment, I think they will chase down that path way too long. The 90 days was just long enough to realize that that's not who I am. It wasn't congruent with my self-identity anymore. My self-identity was contribution, was helping other people, was making an impact and difference in people's lives. And then I flipped it over so fast to selfishness again, and ego, and it just didn't bring me joy. It did not bring me joy. It wasn't who I was anymore. Had I tried that 5-10 years earlier before all the personal development, it might have stuck. But it's not even an age thing, right? It's more of a personal development identity thing. And so I recommend everyone who's never had that nice stuff, go get it. Go try it out and see how much and how long the joy brings you. Because as someone goes, nice car, in the back of their head, what else are they saying? You lucky son of a gun. I hope you crash it. Like, everyone's not really rooting for you. There's a lot of jealousy and there's a lot of envy, and it's one of the ugliest personality traits out there. And the more stuff you have in an era where there's a lot of lack in the world, the people you're trying to impress aren't that impressed at the end of the day. And so luckily, that's a long answer for a short question, but I think my identity was not that anymore. And 90 days was long enough for me to say, vacation's over. Let's get back to making a difference. Because at the end, my legacy is going to be about my family and those I made an impact and helped, not the stuff I acquire. None of it's coming with me at the end anyway. If my stuff doesn't serve me, I'm going to serve my stuff. And I don't want to be a servant to all my stuff.
Right.
I want the stuff I have, even if it is real nice, I want it to serve me or get rid of it.
Everything we have is on temporary loan.
Yeah.
We don't own anything. We think we do, but it's not really ours. It's temporarily loaned to us. And let me ask, first of all, as you were speaking about getting a lot of things, this quote from the great philosopher and mystic Pythagoras, who was brilliant, stated, if you want to know the emptiness of things, desire them. Now, I'm with you, Jeff. I think we both are. I would not tell you as a viewer, don't desire them, because sometimes, and tell me if this resonates with you, Jeff, but sometimes the way to figure out what you don't want is to take it to the limit.
That's right.
I mean,
try it to know you don't like it. I think people ought to try things. I mean, that's the best, I don't know about dangerous things that might risk your life, but I think people ought to try. You've heard, be careful what you wish for. I always was confused by that. What do you mean, be careful what you wish for? Shouldn't you wish endlessly and as big as you can? But I think what they really meant was, when you wish, you obsess. And when you obsess, you work and sacrifice for something, and it might not bring you what you thought it would when you finally do get it. So be a little careful on the front end, or you're going to be super disappointed on the back end.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a philosophical question, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, but I'm working on a new book, and I don't think I've even shared this with you, but I'm working on a brand new book. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm going to save the title because it's going to be a game changer, I believe. But nonetheless, I'm talking about in there there's this whole debate, and I'm sure you've heard it one at one time or another. Is it nature or is it nurture? And the way that's defined is, if we look at epigenetics, it tells us that 51% of who we are comes through our genealogy, and it's handed down to us in our DNA from our parents and our parents' parents and our parents' parents. And so that's a lot. So that would be nature. There's certain things in my nature. Nurture would be my upbringing and my direction by my parents and by society. And it doesn't sound to me, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had a lot of nurturing in the direction of contribute to the world, son. You had a lot of nurturing around don't be broke, son. And this disconnects relationships. Again, a philosophical question, and maybe you've contemplated, maybe you haven't, but 90 days again is pretty darn impressive to do a turnaround. Do you think that was more of your nurture? Is there more to what your parents brought you up in, or do you think it was more innate?
I have to say it's innate. I do. I believe on that nature side, and it's way more reflective when you watch National Geographic and animals, which, you watch, they are what they are, and human beings, although our brains are bigger than most, and our ability to reason, to me, I feel like there's a lot of the nature of the beast and the nature of the person and the DNA and the nature side. The nurture is great. My parents they're great. They're great people. They loved us. They did the best they could. Everyone in our environment, all of our associations were blue collar, hardworking people, just getting by. And I don't think that they did a lot of personal development. I don't think it was I don't remember growing up at the breakfast table and kitchen table and talking about philosophers or philosophies. I don't remember talking about any of even the old timers, the Zig Ziglars and Brian Tracy's or any of those. That was never brought up. I was never in that environment. So when I did get it, it was refreshing and I consumed the heck out of it. But my nature is what brought me back more than my nurture. So that's just my opinion. I think a lot of people, could have retired and stayed that way. I have friends that golf every day and the rest of their life is hobbies. And and I don't criticize them. I'm not designed that way. I actually get more done if I take an extended break. A few days is fine, but once it's 10 days, I'm going stir crazy. Day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, already coming up with business ideas, what to do, got to get back after it. And that's gotta be nature, because I don't need the money. Yeah. So why do I keep going?
Yeah. It makes sense to me. Bersabeh and I are the same way. We went on an outlandish vacation together for 10 days. Yes. We hadn't taken a big vacation since we'd been together. And we went literally it was very, very costly at a very nice place in Cabo. And we were, it was, how much can you lay on the beach and eat fish tacos, after a while, we got to do something meaningful here, we're getting
that's got to be your nature. It some people are the beach bums, let's call them, or whatever, and they just dedicate their life to hanging out. They don't want for much except a great wave. And I don't have a criticism towards that, but I just think once you are self-aware and you know what really moves you, you got to be true to yourself and pursue it. I do think on the blame side, though, you too. I think a lot of people use the nurturing. They want to blame their parents, their environment, their society, their upbringing. So when it comes to the blame game, I think it flips. They say, oh yeah, 90-10. It's not my fault. It's my parents' fault. It's that teacher who told me I never amount to something, whatever. And we all see some people use that adversity to springboard them into proving those folks wrong. And some people use it as the cross they die on and use it as their to prove up their victim mentality. So.
Right. Yeah. Totally agree with that. And that, until you take absolute responsibility for every single thing in your life, you have no power to change it. If it's someone else's fault, then you're a victim. You can't do anything to change it.
And you've heard this: victims never win, and winners are never victims.
That's correct.
There's not a win at the end of the victim game. If it is a game, I'm not saying it's a game. There are true victims out there. You could be mugged or robbed or shot. I'm not saying that. But using a victim mentality, it's always someone else's fault. Woe is me. There's no success at the end of that story. You may garner a little sympathy for a little while, but at the end, it's dead. There's no win at the end of that. So the quicker somebody can get off that, whether it be true or not, the better for them.
For sure. Absolutely. So let's shift gears here for a minute. Let's go global. What do you believe, Jeff? And nothing's off limits in our podcast. We've talked about everything from what is a woman
getting nervous
to all kinds of things. Bersabeh's got a lot of opinions on what is a woman. But what do you believe to be the greatest challenge in our world today?
Good question.
So I heard the philosopher. I'm gonna pull a James Ray here, and I'm not even sure it's 100% correct, but Cicero, the philosopher, said that one of the repeated mistakes throughout history of mankind is people trying to get other people to live like they do. It's like when you conquer a nation, or when you have a neighbor or a family member, you feel like, I live this way, I think this way, you ought to live like me and think like me. So you spend so much of your energy trying to convert people to be more like you. And in a simple relational way, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, the old relationship book. Everyone's attracted by the differences until they get married, and then they just nip on each other and chew each other apart because they don't like the differences anymore, although it was the initial attraction. So I think one of the things is constantly trying to make everybody think or live like you do. And that's where all war is bred out of, and that's where all hate comes from, or dislike. And there's a philosophy, live and let live. But I also believe that comes with, as long as the way you're living isn't hurting my life, live however you want.
Yeah.
So that's one of my belief systems around a great mistake that I see going on everywhere in the world. You should be more like me.
Yeah.
And do you think,
Agreed.
and this we'll get a little more granular here. Do you believe, in your opinion, we all have the right to our opinion, is that a big issue for the United States in your mind, that we believe the world should behave and be like us, or is it something else?
Great question. Without getting political, and I can real quick, I've got so many opinions, and it's more general. You'd be surprised at what my opinion is on some of this stuff. But I think the world looks at America, and I've traveled the world now with my charity. And a big percentage of the world is enamored by the American way, and Hollywood had a lot to do with that. We were really out and in front with our movies, and a lot of the senior, most influential people in countries grew up watching American movies, or grew up. If you were privileged or powerful in these countries, you saw America and you were intrigued by it. But there's, it's got its problems too. It's a very young nation. It's one of the youngest nations everywhere, of anywhere. And now we're already just being in a couple hundred short years, and we're already starting to evolve, and not for the better. It was easy to grow at a very fast rate, like a startup. I got all these startup companies, and you can measure yourself by percentage growth increase. Well, when you start with zero, your percentage growth can happen pretty quickly.
Right.
So once time, all these new economies, as they age and get bigger, you're seeing it. Like as the middle class grows in India, they're now having different issues that when they didn't have a middle class weren't issues. So every size and every maturity phase, I think, of countries has its own group of problems. And I do think sometimes the United States overreaches, and but I think the intention initially is very good. We want to push freedom everywhere in the world. I mean, ultimately, the goal was to help the world become free. But when you go back thousands of years, it's never been that way. So it is a dream, and it's a dream that in my lifetime and yours we'll never see. There's just parts of the world. So freedom is going to be in your mind, like Mandela when he was in prison. That's where you're going to find your true freedom, and the real world, and not having people that want to be dictators, and not having people that want to be authoritarian. We're never going to see a world without that in our, so that's one of my opinions on that.
Yeah, I appreciate your opinion. And by the way, you can get as political as you want or don't want to be here. It's okay. But nonetheless, I think what I realized, and I learned this. Have you read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
I have not.
Yeah, the short story is Frankl was a a Jewish psychologist who was taken into Auschwitz during the World War, and it chronicles his entire experience. And I won't go through blow by blow. It's a great book and a great insight that he had. But he came to this realization that there's a big difference between liberty and freedom. And here's how he defined it. He said, liberty is the ability to come and go and do as you please. But freedom, the ultimate human freedom, is the freedom to choose how you respond or how you experience life circumstances. And I know for me, you mentioned Mandela, and I certainly can't hold a candle to what he did in prison wise, but as you know, I've had that experience, and I realized that if I can be happy and fulfilled in a 10 by 10, then I'm pretty free. You know, I don't have a lot of liberty. I have to be here and do this and do that and do this, but liberty and freedom are two different things, and I think that's what our Constitution tells us. It doesn't tell us freedom. It says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it's not even guaranteeing happiness. You have to pursue it. You have to go after it. And so I can get going too, Jeff, as you well know. But nonetheless, I think that's what's happening in the world today. In our perspective, is that it sure seems to me, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, that there's a lot of entitlement because you and I and Bersaba grew up, one of her first childhood memories was bombs dropping in her neighborhood in Iran, and she had to escape with her family. Right. I mean, that's a pretty traumatic upbringing. And so you've had your challenges. I've had mine. And challenges make you better. And unfortunately, we don't like to hear that. But what my experience is, and I'll turn this to you, is that there's a whole lot of entitlement. This country owes me. God owes me, my parents owe me, and I'd love to hear what your opinion is on that.
I really, when I started my children's charity, people ask, well, why orphans? Out of everything, there's so many wonderful causes, and so many people are passionate about whatever they're passionate about, and I respect that, and I appreciate anybody pursuing, trying to make the world a better place. And I thought, when it comes to entitlement, we're all entitled to one thing, and I believe this is just one of my things I believe everyone's entitled to. Just having a parent or somebody, a guardian, protect you and help you get to adulthood. Just protect you and help you get to adulthood. And there's 155 million orphans in the world today, even in today's day and age. And then, without getting into the whole human trafficking thing, slavery's still alive and well everywhere, just in a little bit of a different form. And so I think we're entitled to having parents, or a parent, even one loving parent, someone looking after you until you can look after yourself. And so that's the one thing I think you're entitled to. All the other stuff is optional. And so that's why I picked up that cause more than any other. And I got a big heart. I feel for the people who are going through other issues and have other challenges, and all those causes are worthwhile causes. I just happen to pick up the one where I want to save these kids. If I could save a child that doesn't have anybody looking after them, then that's where I. But when it comes to entitlement, I come home from Africa now. Now I'll go to Africa and I'll see all these kids who have nothing and a very little chance of a successful future, where I'm trying to get them to make it to adulthood. In most countries, and you've been there too, James, and you guys both been to developing countries. But they always say, when I'm in Africa especially, how old are you? And they go, I made 6, I made 8, I made 10. I'm like, you are 10. They always say made. And it's because a lot of them don't make it, you know, and I know even in parts of India, they make that in all over the world, they really celebrate year one because most children don't make it in those countries, or historically in the past, it's a huge accomplishment to make one. We don't even talk about that in America. That's assumed. You know, there is some child mortality issues, but so few and far between. That's an everyday thing in other places. So I come home from Africa where I'm with all these kids who are so appreciative if I give them a book. They're so appreciative if I give them a little bit of attention and a little bit of love. And, you know, I come home and I've got 6 kids living at my house. And, hey, Dad, they barely look up from their iPad. They get mad if one of their several devices isn't keeping its charge. You know, if they can't scroll through 1,000 shows to see. I just, and it's not even their fault. But this whole entitlement mentality that someone owes you, if you believe that, and a lot of people do, where does it end? And where does that leave you? If you don't get what you believe you deserve, you're going to feel disappointment, right? You're just going to feel disappointed. So I think if you don't expect much out of the world, you can expect a lot from yourself. But if you expect little from the world, you're always going to be grateful. Your gratitude meter will be off the charts because every little bit you get, you're going to be like, wow, this is fantastic. Wow. And you're always going to be in a state of appreciation and gratitude, and things are great. You're going to be happy like those kids when I go to these developing countries. And then I hate to say it, but depression is probably the highest in America. Why is depression the highest in America where everyone has everything? Because the wanting only leads to disappointment and depression. It just does. And so, I don't know, be careful what you wish for. I go back to that again. And this entitlement mentality, man. I just, you know, when you grow up blue collar, you get your dad in your face, the truck driver with the tattoos. No one owes you nothing, you know? And I had that burnt into my head as a kid. And I still feel that way. Most of my disappointment in my life is very closely tied to an entitlement mentality, or thinking somebody owes me something.
Right.
So I want to get so far away from that. Nobody owes me anything is a happier way to live also.
It really is. And in fact, I'll tell you what's a happy way for us to live is that we owe God, literally, because we have this incredible gift of life.
Privilege of life.
And, you know, God's greatest gift to us is the privilege of life. Our greatest gift back to God is to utilize it fully and to fulfill all of our capabilities. And I got to tell you a quick story. I know you've read Harmonic Wealth, or you've listened to it.
I love it. It's a great book.
Thank you.
Recommend on my part. It really is.
I appreciate that. And I don't know if you got the part where I was studying in Peru, and I studied with a shaman back and forth for a number of years. And I started going back with a group of people, and we were building schools in the Andes Mountains. Right. And one of the experiences I had was there's these group of people called the reed people, and they live on Lake Titicaca on reed islands. There's no ground. They build these islands of reeds, and you step on it and literally it sinks and the water comes through because it's just floating on top of the water. And so we went to visit these reed people, and a couple of the people in our group had these soap bubbles, and these little kids had never, ever been off this reed island. And the island is not much bigger than maybe an American bedroom, you know, and so we get up on the island and they start blowing these bubbles, and these kids are going nuts. They're jumping and laughing and playing with each other. And it's just a very happy moment for them. And it just struck me because at the time I had a really good friend in La Jolla who's hugely successful, and he deserves it. He's worked very hard. He came up in the Bronx and he had kids, and his kids, their first car was a BMW that they got. And they were kind of like, hey, you know, I thought, you know, these kids didn't get as excited about a BMW as these kids do about soap bubbles. And so they look like the picture of your kids there. I assume those are the kids behind you. But I'm sure you can relate to that experience given your time in Africa.
You have to stop and think every time you see it. And I don't know, because now that I have children and they're growing up, everyone wants to give their kids what they didn't have. I mean, they do. It's in their heart. Out of love, they give. And let's be honest, a lot of driven people that are business people work hard and they got the guilt factor because I'm so far away. So let me make up for it by buying you stuff, because I'm not giving you the time I think you want. So let me just give you stuff and make up for it. And it never does. And the kids don't want stuff. They say they do, but they really want more time with their parents. And so guilty as charged. I mean, I've done that too, but I see my kids and it's hard to impress them now. It's so hard to impress my kids with stuff. And so I'm making a conscious shift to experiences now. And I'm like, no, it's gotta be experiences that I share with them. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I, we want to go do things with all the kids, because long after we're gone, that's what they're going to remember way more than the car, than the bike, than the clothes or the Jordans, whatever they want. That's so temporary, but those memories will last a lifetime, and we'll enjoy it too, And so I'm shifting. I'm making that shift from stuff and things more to experiences. And I think it's going to be a valuable shift.
Have you taken them to Africa with you yet?
That's next on the chart. I want them to get older where they'd appreciate it. I tried it with two of my kids once. We were in Costa Rica, and we support an organization there that helps really young mothers, teenage mothers, kids 12, 13, 14 having kids. And there's a great center there. A Dutch lady built this place where they're helping out these young, their children having children. And so I brought my kids by there when they were a little younger, and I said, this is what's going on. And like, can we go to the hotel and the pool already? They weren't there yet, and I just think somebody's got to be ready. Right. Some days I want to bring my kids to Africa and leave them there for a year or two, because of the way they're acting. I want them to be more appreciative and grateful and see what it's like. That 90% of how the 90% of the world lives, but they're about ready now. They're good kids. They're really good kids, but I think it's ready. Two of my kids that are living, 2 of the 6 are adopted from Africa. One of them's from Sierra Leone, where Blood Diamond was filmed, and where Ebola was. His parents passed of Ebola when he was 1. So that's David. He's been with us since he was 4. He's 11 now. And then the other one is from East Africa, Uganda. He was one of the first orphans in my first orphanage, and he's living with us. His name's Danson. He's with us now. So we have 2 Africans. My wife's Vietnamese. So we got this big mixed family. 2 of my boys have autism, so we have special needs kids. So I got special needs kids, mixed kids, African kids, and I love it. We are what I think is actually way more representative of what America is.
Yes.
And although I think there's this narrative going on about that's divisive, that's trying to separate everybody. And I know so many families that are mixed, and so many families that are all over the place. And when I moved from Chicago to Georgia, I thought, boy, they're probably going to be really racist down here, which in and of itself is a problem that I was thinking that 16 years ago. And I haven't seen so little of it. And someone says, yeah, that's because you're white. You aren't going to see it. But I'm very aware. Hyper aware now that I have African kids. And, I just think I'm going to go political one moment. Okay.
Go for it.
I'm going to say it on here because I think people need to hear it.
Yes.
It is. And I'm not going to tell you my political stance. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's not liberals versus conservative. It is the governed versus the government is so my philosophy right now. And the way you keep control of an educated, financially secure population is to keep them divided. That's a strategy. It's a strategy. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. If they keep us off kilter, we can't come together to get real change happening. So how did they divide us? Any way they can. And I think there's a lot of great politicians, by the way. And I think a lot of people are in there doing the best they can. But I think the underbelly of it all is bigger government telling us how to live our life. And whenever the people start to get a little restless, then let's divide them. Let's just keep them fighting each other instead of us. And then we can get away with whatever we want, passing bigger spending bills, spending their kids' futures and their kids' futures, not being a financial guy, focus on that, but just taking away freedoms and liberties. Let's just sneak it away in the middle of the night while everyone's fighting. Yeah. And so I think it's an illusion. I think it's a distraction. I think it's a big magic trick. And so my friends that are on the opposite side of the aisle of me, I don't think they really are. I think we're all want for our children the same thing in our futures. I just think, man, we're easily manipulated. That's it. We're just so easily manipulated. And so that's what I really believe is going on in this country right now.
Very well stated.
Yes,
and I would add to that, if I may be so bold, because I totally agree with everything you said. I would add to that, not only keep us divided, but keep us in fear.
That's it too.
If we can propagate fear, people who are divided and are fearful easily give up their freedoms, to use your word that you mentioned earlier, easily roll over and say, hey, take care of me because I'm afraid. And so, yes.
Yeah. So James, Levitan's a Jewish name. My dad's side was Jewish. My dad's uncle had a concentration camp tattoo on his wrist. My mom's side's Episcopalian. So people are like, what are you? Well, I was undecided most of my childhood. I'm a Christian now, and I believe in Jesus. But I will tell you that I love all the Old Testament stories, and I identify strongly with some of those stories and those roots too. But I'd go to my grandparents' side, and they'd have the menorah. We'd celebrate Hanukkah. Then we'd come home to a Christmas tree. But we weren't even into Christianity growing up either. It was all Christmas was about a fat guy in a red suit giving out gifts. Easter was about a rabbit with chocolate eggs. I mean, that was my life until I grew into an adult and figured out what I wanted to believe and be. But having said that, it was always in the back of my mind, how did in some of these concentration camps and cities, how did a handful of soldiers keep thousands of starving, hungry, angry Jewish people at bay? And it was fear. It was totally psychological in the way a few people, which could have very easily been overran by the numbers, by the thousands, and they were all going to die anyway. And maybe some of them, it was the hope they weren't going to. But even the ones that saw it and witnessed it still were afraid to rise up and go because fear is so, so powerful. And so, yeah, keeping us divided and afraid is the way to control anybody. So ask yourself, if you're watching this, if you were to measure yourself, how afraid are you on a regular basis? How many decisions are made out of fear? And how many decisions are made out of, and how riled up are you about divisive and fighting, and you're in fight mode all the time instead of unifying? And I believe so many people are for no reason full of fear.
Yes.
And so I'm with you.
I did not know that you had some Jewish lineage in your background. That's really cool to know. And Bersaba could probably chat with you all day about the Old Testament. She's reading it right now for the first time.
First time in my life.
We're a mixed family too. I'm certainly a white guy, and she's Persian. So, but she's never been exposed to Judaism or Christianity, but until just of late, and so it's fun for me to watch her and to have discussions around what she's reading, and she's reading all the way through. She started in Genesis. What book are you in now? Deuteronomy.
Yes,
Deuteronomy. Easy.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, easy for you to say.
Yeah. So. What's the solution, Jeff? I'm going to ask you if you could solve all these things we've been talking about, division and fear and entitlement. What's the solution that you believe we as individuals can do and should do?
Well, I think the world's solution is love and faith. And I don't mean religion. I got friends of every religion out there, but it's faith. It's just believing there's a bigger meaning to life than what you're going through at this very moment. It gets you through the tough times. I think love and faith is the answer to your personal peace. And I think the answer to the solution is not outside of you, it's inside of us. And it's finding that personal peace. It's finding a way to be more peaceful and to be happier and enjoy this one life. I think the goal of life really should be fulfillment and personal fulfillment. And I think we ought to spend time on that journey of finding what that looks like. And it almost sounds too simple or too easy, but everyone's looking outside for the answers. And I really think the answer's inside of each and every person. But as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, personal responsibility is a must. Take total 100% responsibility for yourself, your thoughts, where you are in life, what situation you find yourself in today, and realize that was it Einstein that said you can't solve the problems in your life at the same level of thinking you were at when you created them, which means most of your problems you created. Take some ownership of it, change the way you think, and you could change your life. And so I think it's way more up here than it is out there. But you got to take ownership, and no one wants to do it. It's so much easier to blame someone else or something else and not take that ownership. So will it happen in our lifetime? I wish it would. Do I think it will? I don't know. But you or a viewer watching this could make a change right now. Full responsibility from where I'm at, and start learning more about yourself and why you think the way you do, and be open to the only change comes with the change of thought. It starts at the change of thought. You got to think about something differently, and then magically it changes. When the reality is it's all right here.
Yeah, it was James Allen who said, circumstances don't make a man, they reveal him to himself.
Yeah.
And so brilliant, written back in the 50s sometime. But nonetheless, I would totally mirror what you said. And again, you read Harmonic Wealth, and I'm a big advocate of not only what you think, but what you feel, because feelings are the heart center. And so when you get that congruence between your thoughts, feelings, and actions, then literally you move to a different world. You literally move to a different world. You view the world differently. You have an entirely different interpretation and perspective. So we could talk all day, Jeff, and we know you're busy, and we could pick your brain forever, and maybe we'll have you back to continue on. But I wanted to make sure that the viewers know something about your new venture, which you so graciously have not dove into really yet. But what is Better, and how is it helping the planet, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's just getting started too. Let's be very clear. It's a startup. We're in year 2. We've made some great grounds. I built a big company in the financial services industry, which is highly regulated, requires someone to get licensed. You have to really desire to be in finance. And people who are financially savvy think everyone should know about money and be good with it. And the reality is most people aren't. Money is just a means of exchange, and they're not that into money. Now, a lot of people are watching podcasts, are usually hungry for business and success. So they probably fall in my camp. But I said, all those years, a very, very small percentage of people really were successful in that endeavor. And I thought, well, what if? Here's what everyone wants. What's one thing everyone wants? Well, they want financial security, but they want a better life. They want to have whatever their life is now, take a snapshot. Everyone wants it to get better. What does that mean? Well, depends what's hurting, right? What's the most important part of the car? The part that's not working that day, right? So if your relationships are struggling, you want better relationships. If you're having health issues, you want better health. If you can't figure things out and you're confused and depressed, and you want a better mental state. Certainly if your finances aren't good, you want better finances. So a better life was the brainchild of the idea. And we were going to create more of a landing page and tools, really quick hacks and really quick tools where somebody can go there and completely free, plug something in and find a few things to help them have a better life, a real healthy platform of tools and information and advice. The business side came when someone said, well, if having a better income might be part of having a better life, that's where the business side came in. And Better Income is a plug and play referral platform, no licenses, no cost. There's so many businesses out there. You pay to join, you got to buy stuff. It ends up stocking up in your garage. You're trying to give it away in the holidays, or you're paying a lot for something and you joined a business to make money, but you're going more broke being part of it. And so those were some of the flaws I saw in businesses. So I said, let's make it completely free. I'll eat the cost of getting the whole thing up and running, and let it be a referral platform where you can refer things that make an impact, a positive impact in an individual or a business, either helps them make or save money. We've got products that do that across the board, save people money on their health plans, help people get out of debt in this moment where there's more consumer debt than ever. We've got programs that help businesses be more effective with the multicultural world we live in with translation software. We've got tools in there for tax credits for businesses to help them get money back that they're missing. The IRS never tells you when they owe you money, but they're sure to tell you when you owe them money. So we've got a handful of products. We're adding products every couple months. And it's just like you would refer your friend to a good restaurant if you thought it was good, or tell them to go read a good book or watch a good movie, but you get paid on it. You get paid for the referral. And the number one filter here, our philosophy is have fun. Number one, we think a lot of people, whether you're a business person or going through life, you're not having enough fun, and you're going to expire at some point. Whatever your faith is, your body, your spirit, and this planet right now, this one time here, the time's ticking. You ought to have more fun. And I just look at the entertainment industry. If you go to a personal development seminar and it costs a few $100, it's hard to fill a room. But if Taylor Swift comes to town, she'll sell out the biggest football stadium every day for a week for entertainment value. We're an entertainment-based society. So I think people want to have more fun. So my philosophy in the business is have fun, make a difference, and then make big money in that order. And so Better Income is a turnkey referral platform. Someone can sign up for free and refer people and get compensated. And it might make a huge difference in someone's life, but it certainly won't hurt. And we're going to beef up a Better Life, the site and the platform. We want your books, your information on here, James. This is I haven't even really invited you yet or asked you for this, but while we're making asks publicly, I would certainly like you to post you're giving away a lot of free content lately. I love it. Just your good free stuff. We'll put there. Eventually we might have a subscription site. We're not there yet, but certainly we think if there's good information that needs to get out, we want to push it out. We want everybody to have at their fingertips all the good stuff. There's certainly plenty of bad stuff at your fingertips, and we've got to overcome that with more good. So that's what we're doing with Better.
Really, really great vision, Jeff. And yes, we will absolutely love to be involved with you in that. So it's now recorded and it's public record.
It's out there.
On record. On record.
Yeah.
No, it's really brilliant, because I know the specifics of a lot of your background, and of course I've worked in a plethora of industries, and there's very few to none that, like you described, you don't have to fill your garage with product, and you don't have to monthly continue to purchase things, and you don't have to pay a big, join fee and all of that. So it's really amazing what you're doing, and the fact that you're bankrolling that yourself is a tribute to you as well. So if someone is interested who's viewing, where would they go to get more information?
Yeah, go to Better, no second E, ABetterLife.com, or you can go to Better Income right there, and that's where you would go to look into that. And please, we're at the formation phase. Give us a little grace for a little while longer. We're putting this all together. And the good news is it's working. The thousands and thousands of people are signing up, and a lot of businesses and individuals are getting helped. And so as we're scaling, we're trying to scale as fast as we can. So we're having a lot of fun. We are making an impact, and there's some people making big money right now. But I will tell you that give us a little grace. Everything doesn't look perfect and run perfectly yet, but this is here to stay, because you can't kill a philosophy, especially one that's right. And having a better life is it's here to stay.
Nice.
Yeah. So
And
we'll
I'll post it too. Yeah.
We'll put the link down
Yeah.
below so that anyone who's interested can go, and we would highly encourage you to do that
Oh, for sure.
as well. So, Jeff, any closing thoughts for our viewer today?
Yeah, I would just say, whoever's watching this, to summate what we talked about here, wherever you are in life, think about this. Two things. One, how can you get the most fulfillment and joy out of the rest of your life? The game of life isn't who acquires the most stuff or the most voters or the most anything. It's who has the most moments of peace and joy in their life. So you go for the right thing. Go for being happy. Go for having as much joy in your life as you possibly can, because that's what you're supposed to use the money for anyway. That's what you're supposed to use the followership for anyway. If it doesn't bring you happiness and joy and meaning in your life, well, then it's nothing. And then I would say also, remember, you got one life. What's your legacy going to be? God forbid you pass today. Have you created a legacy yet? What would you be remembered for? What can you do between now and the rest of your life to do something impactful? And I guarantee you, it has a lot to do. The secret is doing something for others, not yourself. But what can you do between now and the rest of your life to leave a legacy? And so those two things would be my two closing thoughts. Leave a legacy and find as much joy and happiness with the rest of your life as you can.
Well, Jeff, that's why you're on our short list. We love you lots. We respect you and
Yes.
the person that you are, and we just really, really want to thank you for being here today and sharing so much genuine information from your heart and about yourself and others. And so God bless you. Lots of love to you. And for the viewers, we will be back next week, and Bersaba and I will have another topic for you. So we'll look forward to seeing you. All right. God bless. Take care.